At 3:48 a.m., Crimea breathed in fog and silence. Under that pale pre-dawn veil, a Russian crude eased a $2 million 48N6 missile down from a transport truck. For weeks, Ukraine had been bleeding S-400 sites dry. This resupply, fragile, precious, was supposed to be their lifeline. They felt safe, invisible. They did not know that 30 feet above the Black Sea, a 10-pound killer was counting down, 78 seconds from turning their prize into a fireball of shredded steel.
The mastermind hung like a patient vulture, a Ukrainian Leica 100 drone, watching, memorizing, waiting as those trucks crawled from a depot inside Crimea and paused for the fog, believing it their shield. The delivery system? A Magura V5, an 18-foot robotic boat that had slipped past Russian patrols carrying 3 Wild Hornet FPV drones. The whole operation cost roughly $280,000. Russia was about to learn in real time that they would pay more than $12 million for a lesson in asymmetric warfare. On paper, the map belonged to Russia. Podlet K1 radar should have seen everything within 25 miles. Pantsir S-1 missile systems were the guard dogs ready to shred anything that moved. Kasuka 4 jammers were supposed to turn the sky into an electronic graveyard. But Ukraine refused to play by those rules. They would not attack the fortress head-on. They would hunt the delivery boy at the back gate.
This mission was not merely about breaking a radar. It was about breaking Russia's ability to heal, to prove that any attempt to replenish the bleeding fortress would be met with a swift, brutal, embarrassingly cheap counterpunch. The Russians thought the fog would hide their resupply. They were about to discover it had become the perfect cover for hunters. At 03:52 a.m., having navigated more than 100 miles from a clandestine inlet near Odessa, the Magura V5 cut its main engine. It sat 15 meters off the coast, a gray phantom in the mist. A tiny signal flashed across the Leica 100's feed. Resupply in progress. The 10-minute window began to shrink. With a few keystrokes, the operator unleashed hell. Compressed air spat all 3 Wild Hornets from their rails in rapid succession. They steadied within seconds, then dove low, hugging the waves at 30 feet, ghosts skimming a dark mirror. Physically, they were below the Podlet radar's line of sight, hidden by the curvature of the Earth. But you do not need to see a drone to kill it. Russia's Kasuka 4 had created a 50-mile bubble of jamming so dense it could turn a receiver into static. Ukraine had planned for that. Their drones did not rely on a simple radio link. They used a military-grade frequency hopping system that switched channels 500 times per second across a wide spectrum, like trying to whack a mole that teleports between 1,000 holes every heartbeat. Russia fought back with broad-spectrum noise. Ukraine answered with a final, lethal layer. When the drones received the last coordinates, they switched to a fully autonomous terminal guidance package. They stopped listening to operators. Onboard sensors took over for the last miles and executed the strike. You cannot jam a machine that is not listening. At 03:54 a.m., the 2-minute sprint to target began. The Magura V5, its job done, peeled away and began a silent 100-mile retreat to Odessa. The Hornets were now 3 intelligent bullets, each on its own murderous vector. They had plans to defeat sight and plans to defeat the electronic ghost. Then the guard dog barked.
At 3:56 a.m., a single, fleeting blip flickered on the Podlet K1 screen. A ghost for less than a second at 200 feet, then gone. Sergei, the Russian operator, jerked upright. His system tracked persistent threats, not apparitions. He followed the protocol, tried to lock the ghost's last coordinates. Nothing. The target was gone. He had just watched the first move in Ukraine's lethal chess game. The lead Wild Hornet's AI had deliberately hopped into the radar's view for an instant. A quick, insolent hello, then dove back to 30 feet. Sergei cursed and swung his Pantsir's optical and thermal cameras toward the vanishing bearing. He hunted, eyes scanning a grainy, fog-shrouded landscape on the screen. That was the problem. His multi-million-dollar thermal imager was built to lock on the blazing death of a jet engine. A 10-pound battery-powered drone gives off less thermal energy than a rabbit. In the noise, it is invisible. His screens said the sky was clear. Outside, 3 intelligent bullets were under a mile away and closing fast. He was a guard dog barking at a ghost, unaware the real threat was inside the fence.
At 3:57 a.m., 2 new contacts exploded onto his display. Big, hot, and fast at 300 feet. The system flagged them as Bayraktar-class drones. Sergei got an immediate lock. With a flick, 2 57E6 missiles screamed from the rails. $4 million of Russian fury slicing into the fog. Seconds later, 2 bright thermal flashes. Targets destroyed. A surge of pride hit Sergei. He had killed them. He had not. This was the core of the whisper sting tactic, a deliciously devious lie. High above, the Leica 100 was not merely watching, it was conducting. It had relayed the exact bearing of the Pantsir's radar to the Hornet's Cortezia AI. The AI told the first 2 drones to perform a deception climb, briefly pop to 300 feet while activating a tiny electronic amplifier. That tiny device made their 0.05 meter radar signatures bloom into something 10 times larger, the illusion of a much bigger threat. A classic magic trick. Hold the audience's gaze on the right hand waving a sparkling cape while the left hand slips into their pocket. While Sergei celebrated his phantom kills, the third Wild Hornet, the real killer, slipped past defenses undetected. It had a clear, undefended path straight to the beating heart of the Russian network.
At 3:58 a.m., the ruse had worked. The path to the podlet radar lay open. The 2 decoys had bought a golden opportunity. Then the unexpected happened. The twin Pantsir missiles detonated in the fog, leaving a brief, violent cloud of hot gas and debris over the coast. That thermal ghost drifted directly into the 3rd Hornet's flight path and blinded its infrared sensors at the moment that mattered most. The easy shot turned into a flight through a hurricane of fire and sensor noise. Inside the command vehicle, Sergei's elation curdled to cold dread. 2 perfect kills, but the attack felt wrong, too easy. His commander agreed. An order pulsed across the network. Kasuka 4, maximum power, find the source. The air crackled with invisible energy. Simultaneously, a Katron hunter-killer drone launched from a nearby pad. Its camera became slave to Kasuka's direction-finding sensors, tasked to hunt and destroy. At 3:59 a.m., Ukrainians watched the scene they had baited unfold with almost clinical calm. High above, the Leica 100 saw everything. The blinding thermal cloud, the surge of jamming, the Katron's launch. It relayed a single pre-planned command. Miles away, on the deck of the retreating Magura V5, a last system coughed to life. A 20-pound fog generator began pumping out a thick, dense cloud of artificial mist, pouring a river of white into the existing pre-dawn haze.
It was a tactical masterpiece. The cool, dense fog rapidly dispersed the hot thermal cloud from the missile explosions, clearing the Hornet's infrared view. Simultaneously, it created a narrow, impenetrable wall of white, a visual and thermal curtain making it impossible for the Katron or Sergei's remaining sensors to get a lock. Russia had not realized they were no longer fighting drones. They were fighting the weather itself. At 4 a.m., the Hornet's view resolved. The thermal noise collapsed into clarity. The artificial fog had worked like an extinguisher on the blinding heat from the earlier detonations. The path was clear. But the mission was suddenly more dangerous. The Russian convoy was no longer static. Panic had set in.
trucks carrying fresh S-400 missiles lurched and scattered at a clumsy 10 miles per hour, a desperate attempt to present multiple targets. Inside the Pantsir vehicle, Sergei was now blind. Blind men are dangerous. He fired again on instinct. 2 more $100,000 missiles launched into the white wall, chasing echoes and ghosts. In a final throw, an order flashed. Activate Nebo-M. The giant long-range radar began its slow, deliberate power-up. It was a last roll of the dice, but it takes minutes to bring Nebo to life. And even then its gaze is heavenward, useless against a threat already inside the house. The Ukrainian operator's heart hammered at 120 beats per minute as he juggled multiple feeds: the Hornet pilot view, the Leica's God's Eye, the convulsing positions of fleeing trucks. The Leica's laser designator painted an invisible dot on the roof of the lead truck, the one carrying 4 brand new S-400 missiles priced at $2 million apiece. The AI needed the final go. The operator gave it. Engage Target 1. Quartizia took full control, ingesting the laser data from the Leica, ignoring the panicked volleys of the Pantsir, ignoring the other fleeing vehicles. Its sole mission: turn $8 million of advanced Russian ordnance into a single, brilliant fireball. 10 seconds to impact. The Hornet's flight surfaces made micro-adjustments, calculating an intercept vector for a slow-moving truck. 5 seconds. The camera tightened. You can almost make out the cylindrical silhouettes of missiles under a canvas tarp. 3 seconds. The truck driver shouted into his radio, convinced he was escaping, blind to the 10-pound angel of death screaming toward his cargo. At 4:01 a.m., impact. The Hornet's 3-pound PG-9B shaped charge did what it was designed to do. It did not merely explode. It focused every joule of energy into a white-hot jet of molten copper, traveling at hypersonic speed. No thicker than a pencil, the jet punched through canvas and 20 millimeters of missile casing like wet paper. The initial detonation was small. What followed, 0.3 seconds later, was the true horror. Solid rocket propellant, the stable, stubborn fuel packed into an S-400, will burn, smolder, even survive fire. It has one weakness: catastrophic shock. The shape-charged jet acted like a hypervelocity syringe, injecting a catastrophic impulse directly into the propellant grain. The stable fuel did not merely burn, it sympathetically detonated. A chemical burn meant to last 15 seconds was compressed into less than 1. The first detonation inside the truck, instantly vaporizing the vehicle and its crew. The pressure wave slammed the adjacent missile, then the next, a chain reaction of unimaginable violence. In 1.3 seconds, 8,000 pounds of solid rocket fuel erupted into a towering fireball, temperature spiking toward 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. By 4:05 a.m., the Leica 100's camera had to auto-adjust to avoid being whited out by the blast's raw intensity. Trucks that thought they were escaping were now peppered with burning shrapnel from their own sister missiles.
Do the math. Ukraine expended 1 Wild Hornet. Total mission cost? Roughly $15,000. Russia lost 1 transport truck, its crew, and 4 S-400 missiles valued at $8 million. A return on investment of over 53,000%. Not even the smartest Wall Street fund prints a payday like that. The strategic fallout arrived before the smoke cleared. The S-400 battery the missiles were meant to supply stood empty, its position confirmed and now painfully vulnerable. Crimea's air defense was not just pierced, it had been gored and left bleeding. Russia had not merely lost missiles, they had lost the illusion of security. A $280,000 operation, spearheaded by a single $15,000 drone, had erased an $8 million resupply and checkmated Russia's reinforcement plan. The lesson was brutal and simple. In modern war, victory does not always belong to the party with the biggest toys. It belongs to the one who knows how to use the fog. So, now that this glaring vulnerability has been exposed, what should Ukraine target next?
The Kerch Bridge? A naval base? Drop your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to see what burns in Crimea.